So I'm really just onto the final polishing details now. One thing that I've been putting off was this plinth. When I went to the house and put the plinth down on the ground and checked it for level, there was about a 3mm forward fall from level. So I'm going to have to take 3mm off the back of the plinth and then taper it down to nothing at the front. So that way when I put the plinth down on the ground, everything's sitting level, and then everything going up from there isn't leaning either which way. So I've just ripped off 3mm from the back. I'm just going to put it back on, and then that will give me my taper, which I can then just plane off with a hand plane. So you can see there now I've got this little lip that I then need to plane forward and taper off to nothing. So now that I've got that taper established, I've taken it back apart and now I'm just doing its final glue up. I'll pop it in the clamps, check for square, and then give everything a good sand back so it's all nice and smooth and flat. Now I'm going to be putting a decorative chamfer on the front face of this with the Japanese hand plane, and then for the rest of it I'm going to be putting a relatively substantial round over on all of the bottom faces, apart from the last maybe 10 or 15mm up towards the front face, so you can't see it. But what that's going to do is, because this thing's so heavy and it has to be pushed back on a hardwood floor into its final resting place, I don't want there to be any sharp edges that could potentially catch the joins in the wooden floor. I'm going to be putting some felt on there after the fact, just as a final precaution, so this round over might not be entirely sort of necessary, but I figured it's better to be safe than sorry in this situation. Next up, I've just got to mark and drill the holes for the screws to attach the plinth to the underside. I'm going to do the initial holes quite a bit bigger to allow for a bit of movement throughout the seasons as the main case body expands and contracts, and then I'll come back in and do a substantially larger countersink so the heads of the screws are well away from the floor. To mark the locations for where I'm going to pre-drill the holes into the underside of the case, I find the easiest way is to just put the plinth onto the case and then use the same drill bit that I used to drill the holes, poke them through, give them a little tap with the hammer, and then that gives me my location. Sweet, so that's pretty much it. I always like to drive the screws in and out a couple of times in hardwoods, kind of like what I was explaining with the brass screws, just to cut the threads and make sure I haven't drilled them a little bit too small. And then I can slap it on, flip it over, and have a look and see how it looks. Next time I'm going to be getting started doing some pre-finishing on the upper part of the case before I do the big glue up. So stay tuned and you'll get to see some colour coming along pretty soon.